Earlier this week, the trove of documents from Lev Parnas certainly shook up the news cycle, and then he doubled down doing an interview with Rachel Maddow last night, revealing even more about what Donald Trump knew about the Ukraine scheme. We're gonna have sections of that interview for you, and joining us to break that down, that and more, Tommy Vitor, co-host of Pod Save America. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. You look great today, by the way. It's a nice tie. I feel terrible right
now. Thank you. I'm trying to hold it together. I'm wickedly sick, but I got to put up a strong front. So we really do appreciate you joining us, though. It has certainly been a news week, huh?
Yes, all the time, all consuming.
Yeah, so look, before we launch into the videos from Rachel Maddow, I just wanted to get your brief impression of the trove of documents, the text messages, the Robert Hyde stuff, all that came out earlier this week. What are your thoughts about the significance of what was revealed?
So, I mean, if the Robert Hyde documents are true, and if he was really running a scheme to track our ambassador in Ukraine, that's incredibly troubling, because the kinds of people who would surveil and track a US official in Ukraine are the kinds of people that I personally think you should be very, very worried about. Now, Lev Parnas, like, if we believe the totality of what he said last night, and there's a lot of reasons why we probably shouldn't, he suggested that Hyde was just crazy and was sort of full of it. If you compare that to some of his other public behavior, including getting arrested at Trump Doral and briefly detained, maybe that seems to match up. But I mean, look, this is a pervasive scheme. There are many more people involved than we initially thought, including the deputy head of the RNC. So obviously, this is something that should be discussed as part of impeachment.
Exactly, and we should mention that Lev Parnas did not believe that there was a serious threat to Marie Yovanovitch. Now, Ukraine has announced that they are going to be investigating it. So ironically, there has been an announcement of investigations from Ukraine, but not of Joe Biden in this particular case. That said, why don't we launch into some of what we learned last night, starting with how much did Donald Trump know? Here is Lev Parnas on Rachel Maddow.
What do you think is the main inaccuracy or the main lie that's being told that you feel like you can correct?
That the president didn't know what was going on. President Trump knew exactly what was going on. He was aware of all of my movements. I wouldn't do anything without the consent of Rudy Giuliani or the president. I have no intent, I have no reason to speak to any of these officials. I mean, they have no reason to speak to me. Why would President Zelensky's inner circle or Minister Avakov or all these people or President Poroshenko meet with me? Who am I?
So really fast, it is always like, it's great to have him on the record saying that Donald Trump was aware of this. I've always felt it was a little bit bizarre how much work had to be done to show that Donald Trump knew about a scheme to put pressure on them to investigate Biden when Trump himself is on a transcript asking for them to do that exact thing. So, but how significant do you think this is? How difficult is this going to be for Senate Republicans as we enter this trial to sort of pretend they don't acknowledge the significance of it?
John, I mean, you watch these interviews in the moment and it feels like this unbelievable blockbuster conversation where Parnas lays bare that Trump was involved. There's a letter from Rudy Giuliani saying that he was acting on Trump's behalf. Logically, what he's describing makes sense. Like, of course, that the president of Ukraine wouldn't meet with Lev Parnas unless he thought it was on behalf of the president of the United States. And so it feels incredibly significant. But we've had moments like this repeatedly during this administration where something that feels so big and so blockbuster somehow gets ignored after 3 or 4 days by the press corps. My hope here is that if you can shrink that window between when Republicans like Mitt Romney learn about this and then have to vote on it, sometimes you can catch them while they still have an inkling of shame. But if you give them enough time and space, they'll basically excuse anything Donald Trump does.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, how far do you think that can go? Is there enough shame to potentially get someone like Mitt Romney or others to vote for witnesses, like perhaps for Lev Parnas to come in? Or do you think that anything that's been revealed could convince someone like a Mitt Romney or a Collins or Murkowski or whoever to actually vote to remove the president?
I mean, I have almost no hope that these guys will vote to do the right thing because they just think it's the right thing. My hope comes from polling that shows that voters want to hear from more witnesses, and the fact that I think a lot of these vulnerable senators know that you could make a case against them that they're helping with a cover up and obstructing justice in some way. So that gives me like a glimmer of hope that we might be able to get witnesses. And now, like, if that comes with forcing Hunter Biden to testify, I personally am okay with that. Like, I think it's ridiculous. It's a distraction from the issue at hand, but it's a trade I would make because I do think we need to hear from John Bolton.
Okay, interesting. And I've heard that from more and more people over time. So that is interesting and perhaps even could happen. I have a hard time believing he would agree to that, but a less hard time believing that the Democrats might at least broach the possibility. So why don't we go to another bit of the video? There's a heads up to the control room. We're actually gonna jump ahead because I've wanted to know this entire time, how much did Attorney General Barr know? We know that once the whistleblower initially raised concerns, Barr was part of the team that tried to quash the entire thing. And so here is Lev Parnas being asked about Attorney General William Barr.
Do you know if Mr. Giuliani was ever in contact with Mr. Barr specifically about the fact that he was trying to get Ukraine to announce these investigations into Joe Biden?
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Barr knew about that?
Mr. Barr had to have known everything. I mean, it's impossible.
Did Rudy Giuliani tell you he'd spoken to the Attorney General specifically about Ukraine?
Not only Rudy Giuliani, I mean, Victoria and Joe, they were all best friends. I mean, Attorney General Barr was basically on the team.
So that's not quite as strong a statement as the last one about Donald Trump. There was some implication there. Do you think that that is going to stick?
I hope so. I mean, it seems like that William Barr is one of the Trump's goons. You know, he's totally on board. He's not acting like an attorney general. He's a truly Nixonian seeming figure, and that he does embrace Trump's demand that he be his Roy Cohn, right? He seems to view himself as Donald Trump's attorney and not as the Attorney General of the United States. So it is fascinating that he's now implicated. Parnas brought Mike Pence into the equation. So it does seem like the circle of people who are aware of what's happening keeps expanding. And like, frankly, I don't think that should surprise us, right? I mean, early on, there were all these questions about whether Secretary of State Mike Pompeo knew about the extortion call to the Ukrainians, and he lied and ducked the questions. And then we later learned that he was literally listening to the call in real time. So it doesn't surprise me that these goons are in the fix.
And so far as I've seen, I haven't seen a statement from Mike Pompeo about the apparent threat to Marie Yovanovitch. You think like that's one of your people, or at least one of the people that worked for the organization you now run, you would think that he would show concern for that, but so far he has been AWOL. This really does seem like one of them will occasionally get trotted out to defend Donald Trump, but for the most part, they seem to take turns trying to keep their head down, perhaps because they understand that while Donald Trump is unlikely to suffer consequences for all of this, people in his inner and outer circle, there are many of them that are serving time in jail right now.
Yeah, I think that's such a smart and important point. I mean, politics hasn't brought down Donald Trump yet, but it's brought down a lot of people around him for corruption. They've been fired. They've been humiliated. I mean, look at Jeff Sessions basically begging for votes now back in Alabama. I mean, it's pathetic. But yeah, like just remember Mike Pompeo was like the leading pitchfork wielding demagogue on Benghazi, right? Even when he would write like dissenting reports that would almost attack the Republican majority when they didn't find enough fault with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton during Benghazi. He today, Politico reported that his team just canceled a briefing for congressional leaders about embassy security, just to let you know how little he actually cares about his workforce and substance. It's all politics for him. He's a total hack. I don't get why Sunday show hosts treat him deferentially and they let him bluster and lie. And he's just a pompous jerk on their air.
Thank you for watching this clip from the Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members-only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.